Hello, my name is Myre, and this is the Star Citizen Calling All Devs core gameplay update with Rich Tyrer. So we've been expecting this one for about a week now, and when they said it was coming out, they mentioned that it was like medical gameplay. It looks like it's a 30-minute one. He's going to be talking about not just medical gameplay, but other core gameplay actor-sitter stuff as well. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Calling All Devs,
All right.
our series where we take questions from you, the Star Citizen backer, and pose them directly to our developers. On this week's show, we are talking all things gameplay pillar with our gameplay pillar director, Mr. Richard Tyrer. Richard, how you doing, man?
Core gameplay
Hello, I'm
director.
doing very well.
We got a lot of things to cover today. So the gameplay, we don't need to go into what the gameplay pillar is and everything, but suffice to say that a lot of the core elements that make up Squadron 42 and Star Citizen come from the gameplay pillar, the kind of day-to-day activities of the player.
So it's both Squadron
Essentially,
and SC, it makes sense.
The core gameplay pillar is anything that's character-related or actor-related, and covers a lot of mixed features such as like fire or physical damage, and radar and scanning for both ships and on FPS. So if you look at like the two main feature pillars, you have obviously the vehicle pillar, and then there's a core gameplay pillar, and we kind of coordinate to create, if we're not doing it, they're doing it, and if they're not doing it, we're doing it kind of thing. That's the best way to describe it.
Much better than my way, anyway. So today we're talking about some of the features that are in development under your pillar right now. Some are coming in the upcoming Alpha 3.15. Some will be coming a little bit later, as they're ready. Let's start off with the ones that people are perhaps most familiar with and are asking about. Let's start off with player healing. What can you tell us about where we're at, how we're doing, and what we can expect in the upcoming Alpha 3.15?
So player healing is kind of the next iteration of what we classified as actor status. So actor status T0, when we released around CitizenCon, probably about a year ago now. I think it was like 3.9, around about that. But that kind of covered the first iterations of the statuses that the player covers, such as like eating, drinking, hypothermia, all of those things. Yeah, so this is the next iteration of that, which covers essentially injuries. So we already have in the game right now, the player has global health. So when you look on your HUD, you have the little first aid symbol, and it says, it's your global health from 0 to 100. Probably what people, some old backers probably will remember, is that we also have the little man, and the little man comprises up of the different body parts on you. So you've got your arms, you've got your legs, you've got your core and your head, and they are actually individual pools of health. But they used to be that, and that's what I say about some of the old backers, is that used to be the only thing that you could see. You didn't have the global health. We introduced the global health widget when we released Active Status T0. But the way it works under the hood is that your limbs take damage. And so say I get shot in the arm, and let's say I lose 5 health points in the arm. What happens under the hood is it goes, okay, let's move 5 health points from the arm. And then it removes 5 health points from the global health. And it was always doing this. You just never
it's always
saw
done
it.
this, yeah.
So you only would ever die when your global health got to 0. It didn't matter that your limbs could get to 0. But it was waiting for your global health. So if I just kept shooting you in the arm, even though your arm might only have 20 health points, your global health might be 100 health points. So I keep shooting you, and your arm is now ruined, essentially. And then I could keep shooting you, and eventually you'd die.
Even if it was the arm.
There was always the intention that your limbs would basically have these statuses based on their own individual health, and then that would tie into this kind of the greater gameplay or the greater healing gameplay that we're talking about. So basically now what we've taken is we've taken that system, and now we're starting to introduce the injuries that will apply to you when you take severe damage in your limbs. Right. So you can have a traumatic head injury, you can have a traumatic body injury, you can have leg injuries and arm injuries.
So in the past, when you took damage in like Star Marine or in the verse, and like your arm went to red, you could still get shot in the arm, even when it was, damaged or destroyed, and you would die from just being shot in the arm. I wonder when they get to where he's going to talk about this, like a global health pool arm stuff, when your arm gets destroyed in this new thing, if your arm reaches destroyed and they keep shooting your destroyed arm, will that keep contributing to that global health pool or no? I wonder.
And the way it kind of works is that we're still using the health system, but we're kind of tracking this invisible number behind the number in the back end, which is kind of like body limb wear. So essentially, imagine if I keep shooting you in the arm, because we were talking about the arm, and you might lose all your health, and that's fine. If you then med pen it up and heal your arm back up as we do now, if you haven't given it a lot of time, so you're not taking care of yourself, you keep getting shot on the arm and you keep getting shot on the arm.
Just the one
basically
arm.
That wear is going to keep building and building and building until you get essentially a broken arm.
Okay.
And we have 3 tiers or severities of injury. Tier 1 or severity 1 is the highest, that's the worst. Then we've got tier 2 and then tier 3. So essentially, when you get a tier 3 injury, it's basically going, hey, now you're going to start suffering consequences of that injury. And you can't just get a med pen and go, cool, I'm just going to use my med pen. Your med pen will heal your limb health back up to full health. But the injuries on your arm will give you different effects and different statuses. And that's why I'm saying it's the next iteration of active status. Right. As you start to suffer from dehydration, as you start to suffer from hunger, or your stuff hyperthermia or hypothermia, you start to undergo these different states. So your stamina, you can't run as far, you can't sprint as long. We have lowered max health, and we have all the different eyeball effects that start to come on, whether there's the blood vision or whether it's the double vision and things like that. So
it sounds to me that essentially, so with ships right now, and this feature doesn't really exist all that much in ships, but visually under the HUD you can see it. With ships, you have ship item health and you have ship item wear. And item health, you can see it has like the heart, and when your item gets shot, that goes down. And you also have item wear, and it looks like they want to get health and wear onto the player as well, part of making everything unified and systemic, so that let's say the arm gets taken down to 50% health and then it gets healed back up the medipen, the wear might still be low, and wear might need something other than a medipen to repair. Maybe you have to go back to a hospital to get the wear taken care of. Maybe you need somebody with a specialized medigun to get the wear taken care of. But it looks like there's going to be a lot more than just using the medipen, so it's interesting. A lot of the stuff that he talked about with tiers 1, 2, and 3 of damage or whatever, that seems to be a holdover from some of the stuff they had talked about before, with the ragdoll and stuff. When your health is normal, I believe you're green, or it used to be green, then it went yellow, then it went red, then it went black. So yellow, red, and black is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 of being damaged.
Or whether you...
But of course, he's also talked about, sorry for pausing again, but of course he's also talked about how it's not just going to be, yellow, red, and black, but also depending on the kind of damage, there are different states. And he's talked about, redding out in the eyes. He's talked about other stuff, maybe based on the kind of damage your character takes.
When you're cold, you start to shiver, or if you're under a severe pressure. So what we have is we have all these different statuses that trigger these internal body reactions to you suffering these injuries. So with the upcoming healing status, what we're doing is that you can then suffer this injury. Now, so let's say you've suffered an injury, and let's say it's a severity 3 or tier 3. So that's the lowest severe injury. So let's say if your broken arm, it's like a fracture. So make sure you've got a hairline fracture in your arm. So you can still use your arm, you can still do it, but maybe now you can't hold your gun as firm. So you've got a bit more weapon sway, and so on and so forth. So you start to notice it, you're thinking, okay, I've got this injury. Now my little man is showing my arm is red, and and it's showing I've got a tier 3. And it's like, okay, I need to go back to a medical facility to remove this injury. There's no way for you to remove the injuries out on the field.
Okay.
You have that injury. You have to then go and get it sorted. So you can then go back to a medical facility, and your medical facility, there are different classifications of the medical facilities. We have tier 1, 2, and 3. So a hospital or a physical location is going to be what are classified as a tier 1 facility. That's the best facilities you can get.
Right.
So they will always be able to hear everything out. And you can see where I'm going here. Right. Tier 2 is the second, and third is the worst. And the way that we're tiering it up is that tier 3 can heal anything that is any injuries that are tier 3. Tier 2 can heal any tier 2s, and tier 1 can heal tier 1 and below.
Okay.
By the way, I always wanted it the other way around, but we'd already committed to the tiering, so I was like, okay, fine, that's fine.
So I wonder if this then is directly links to how the Apollo is going to work, the RSI Medivan thing, where like, you know, you can have like 6 tier 3 beds, or like you can have 4 tier 2 beds, or 3 tier 1 beds, or 2 tier 1 beds, which means that if you have an Apollo with 2 tier 1 beds, then you don't need to go to the hospital. I think that's what they're saying, but you know, things have been different, but it looks like this might be kind of where they're gearing up towards. I also wanted to kind of take us away from the video for a really quick second to show you the design document from way back in 2014 that outlines some of this stuff here. And you can see even back in 2014, they already had the idea of this damage model already. And it looks like that's what they're committing to here. I think that what I might do is I might make a YouTube video looking back at this and comparing it more, you know, like just comparing it with what Rich Tyrer and Chris Roberts said now and also at the beginning of the year, and see what's deviated and what's the same and what we can maybe expect in the future, because I think that might be cool. All right.
I could do a whole segment someday on the way that we tier things in all aspects of our development.
Exactly. So essentially what we have is we have this injury. So you've got this injury, and it's affecting how your character plays the game. It's affecting the effectiveness of your character, whether that's in combat, whether that's, well, in combat, or whether that's in mining, or, you know, how much you can carry or how much you can sprint, all the different, you know, whether you can see, how well you can see, all of these different things. So if you've got a traumatic head injury, for example, you know, you might start to suffer double vision, you know, your stun resistance won't be as high. So if you get hit from force reactions, you'll fall over easier, things like that. So what we're introducing is we have this severity, and then when you get to the tier 1 severities, that's where you've taken significant amounts of damage. You know, you've gone down, you've been revived, all of that kind of thing, and you're in a situation where, like, tier 1, you might have like a multiple fractured arm where you can't use your arms anymore.
Okay.
You might be able to use your arms for like that one moment, like if it's your life or death dependent on, like, look, I need to get over that wall and I'm just gonna do it. Great, but you're not going to be able to like climb a 20-meter ladder. So if your ship's got a ladder,
will drop or whatever,
then you're in big problems. So this is,
you wouldn't be able to get back into your Valkyrie.
This is where we started to introduce the healing and medical gameplay. So what we're doing from the healing and medical gameplay is that we have the multi-tool attachment for the multi-tool is the healing attachment, or sorry, the multi-tool healing attachment for the multi-tool, and then we have the dedicated healing gun. So the multi-tool itself will be an improved version of the MediPen. So the MediPen, essentially, what you'll be able to do with the MediPen is you'll be able to use it to heal up your health,
just the health, heal
injuries, and you'll be able to use it on other people as well. So you'll be able to go and jab it into other people and help heal up some of their injuries.
With permission.
What the multi-tool does is it allows you to heal up not injuries, it allows you to heal up the health, so you can heal up the limb health and your global health. And it also allows you to scan that person and understand what is wrong with them.
Okay.
Because the other thing that we're introducing as part of this pass of the healing or act status T1 is the downed state. So any time where you would have probably died in Star Citizen, or should I say 99% of the times, because there is going to be a 1%, and I'll explain that in a minute. Most of the times where you would have died, now you would go into the downed state. And the downed state is where you are unconscious, you are not dead, you are just unconscious, but you are slowly dying. And that slowly dying might take 2 hours. Now, at any point when you go down, you can choose to release and respawn. But when we later down the line, we introduce death of a spaceman, and we want people, you know, and dying is like a real problem, you can wait to somebody to come and rescue you. So you might have a buddy, let's say we're playing together, I fall down a cliff or I get shot, I go down. You can then come and revive me, either using a medical pen or using the multi-tool healing attachment. So I'm now no longer below 0 health. I'm healthy. I can now stand up. I might have injuries, I might not, depending on what's taking me down, but I'm back in the game. So death now has a way for you to be brought back. If you receive, and this is the 1%, if you receive more damage than your entire health bar again, so let's say you go from 100 to minus 100, aka you get shot with an Idris railgun and you're an EVA, you will go straight to death.
Okay.
That's like, go to jail, don't collect your 200. That's it.
So this is new information, and so essentially he's confirming now that like when the healing gameplay comes in at tier 1, basically they're going to do the MMO thing of, okay, you've taken enough damage to be downed, you can now be revived. But they're also doing the Dungeons and Dragons thing now, where when you're downed, if your hit points go past what your maximum hit points were, then you will die outright without being able to be rescued, which is really interesting. I've always been excited for this. If anybody's played Barotrauma before, this seems to be almost exactly how Barotrauma's medical gameplay works, but just in 3D, which is really cool.
So essentially, I should not say go to jail, because I think you have to go to jail. So that was a Monopoly reference. For the purposes of very clear, it means that you just die and respawn in a hospital or in a location.
Right.
So if we go back down that road, so we have this down state, so now people can revive you. But let's say I revive you and you're back, but now you've got the worst case severity. You've got a tier 1 injury in your legs. Mm-hmm. So you can't even stand up.
So they're destroyed.
You're in prone. You're locked in prone because your legs are shattered.
Oof.
So how do you go around? And I say shattered as in they're really bad.
Spaghetti
so we don't
legs.
want to get into the details of the medical issues of what you're actually undergoing, but let's say they're the worst severity injuries and it prevents you from standing, right?
This is not getting into the details.
Yeah, exactly. This is the high level.
Yeah, I do want to remind people that we're going to have a segment on ISC about all of this in like August or September. So
But anyway, so what happens is, obviously, if you then go into a tier 3, what we're introducing these different levels of drugs, and this is where we'll have medical, like pen versions that you can stab into. So if you've just got the multi-tool and you scan somebody, it might say, oh, this person can't stand on his legs anymore because the pain is just too great. It's crippling him. Okay, I'm gonna stab him with my anesthetic pen.
Okay.
We'll have specific law names for them.
So are they implementing more than the MediPen with a tier 1, or is this now in the future? I don't think he's necessarily specified, but that's cool. So like we can expect more than just the MediPen for triage. But I love the idea of being able to use the multi-tool in general for triage, just so you can see what's up and then decide what you need and if you might need to call somebody else to come, But like what they haven't specified, and I hope they will do, is of course, if you do find somebody like his example with broken legs, it'd be cool if you could like drag them or fireman carry them or whatever when they've been revived, because I think you'd need to, right?
Or I can use the dedicated healing gun, and the dedicated healing gun is I can scan them and I'll be able to choose which drugs I can then administer to the person who's injured to get them back on their feet. Now, it doesn't heal their injuries, it just removes the symptoms. And it removes the symptoms so that person can then get back to a location, a medical facility. So if you've got a tier 3, that would be like maybe the Cutlass Red would be tier 3, the 890 jump, or the Carrick medical facilities, that might be like a tier 2 facility. Okay. And then the tier 1 facilities are like the dedicated hospitals, the physical locations. So you can get back to a medical facility
as an example,
and then go into a medical bed and then heal yourself from these injuries, and then you can continue. So essentially, these things aren't going to jump up on you. They're going to be things that happen over time. Like I said, it's like a wear in the background. It's almost like your vehicle's wearing.
Right.
And then what we also have is we have this thing called the blood drug level, and that's what is monitored on your HUD as part of all of your active status widgets. So
for overdosing, I'm sure this is.
So this is your suit monitoring the amount of basically external drugs inside your system. And that could be alcohol, it could be med pens, it could be all these other drugs that we're adding. I think we're adding 4, I know that we're adding 4 bespoke drugs to the system. And then you'll have to balance how much you can apply to them with the dosage, because you don't want to overdose them, because if you overdose them, they'll pass out. And then you'll have to decide which ones you want to use, and that will give you a timer. So you'll be able to understand, like, okay, this is going to give them an hour here, an hour here. That's enough for us to get back to the ship and get back to a hospital location or a medical facility if you have a ship with medical facilities. So essentially what we're introducing is the healing profession. This is you're the first responder. This could be you out with your friend.
Dude, I'm so happy.
They've died or whatever, or later down the line, the whole profession around where death is going to be really important. And obviously with this, death comes inventory, so you'll lose your items on death if you choose to respawn. So this is people will be able to bring you back, give you drugs to alleviate the symptoms that are specific for your injuries so that you can function to get back to a location. And if you don't have those drugs, you'll then be able to body drag somebody back to your ship, and then you'll be able to take them to a location that has medical facilities and actually drop them off at an emergency elevator, and you'll have a synchronized animation of putting them into the medical bed and then basically send them directly to hospital.
There we go.
Or heal them in a ship if you're putting them in there. So that covers kind of like, it's the healing gameplay, the healing profession that revolves around healing your limbs, what the statuses you're going to be receiving, the different hospital tierings and medical facilities. And then on top of that, the one thing that we're adding is the respawn, which is where you're going to be respawned. So now when you die, you won't just respawn in a hab. You'll respawn in a hospital facility. If you've respawned in that hospital facility, you'll be in a medical gown, and then you'll be able to access your own inventory. Obviously, if you've died somewhere outside of a landing zone, your gear will be left with your body. If you've died in a landing zone for whatever reason, what we're saying is that the security have come and collected you, and they've taken you to hospital, and they've revived you, so your gear will be in the room, so you'll be able to then take it with you. So
that's a lot of information, a lot of it which we've already heard before, but I think what's very important here now is, to me, I feel as if the lore system needs to evolve a bit more with this, because essentially what's happening now is it's saying that, like, when you're out in the open or whatever and you get killed by somebody or you get knocked out by a player, then the player who knocks you out has the choice to finish you off. And if they finish you off, then you lose, like, your characters, like in the Death of a Spaceman ticks, your character loses what they had on them and all this important stuff. So, when you take out a player, now it means that you won't necessarily get, like, the worst of the worst when it comes to, like, you haven't done manslaughter, you just, you knock them out, you can leave, right? And now it's up to that player who, knocked you out to say, okay, whatever, I'm going to finish you off. And so the lore system needs to evolve with this to make it, to give killing somebody, or I suppose murdering somebody, a much harsher kind of, like, I guess, like a much harsher penalty than what we currently have for it. Just to make sure that, like, people who do get knocked out get the opportunity to get back on their feet, as it were.
You'll also be able to choose which hospital you want to respawn at. So if you want to go and choose, I want to always respawn at Microtech, you can go and choose and say, this is my respawn point where I want to respawn. Tier 2 and above facilities or ships will only have the ability to respawn. So that means Tier 3 medical beds won't allow you to respawn. And Tier 3 medical beds are what's in the Cutlass Red right now. So that's going to be a loss of functionality, which is what it currently has.
There we go. And I predicted that before. I said that wasn't going to happen. The Cutlass Red is not going to be a respawn ship. But Rich is saying a Tier 2 one can be, which means that, like, your 890 jump and your Carrack, you might be able to set as a respawn point in the future, as something you can actually go back to, which is interesting.
This was always the intention. That was always a placeholder solution when we added it to the PU, I think, like the start of 2020, if I'm remembering correctly. So that kind of covers the research. And clearly we want to be able to have major hospital facilities at all of the major landing zones. We want to have clinics at truck stops and things like that. So essentially you're going around and choosing where you want to respawn. And then obviously that ties in later down the road in terms of, like, Death of a Spaceman, DNA integrity, which we've talked about previously. But
I want the lore team to talk about what they how they want to explain this DNA integrity thing, because it doesn't necessarily make all that much sense. But what this does mean, though, it does mean that, like, the Apollo as a respawn vessel is going to only allow you to respawn 4 people at a time maximum per Apollo, if you wanted to do, like, a prolonged, like, a battle or whatever, with things like, the what is it called again? Not the Starliner. I keep mixing this up. The Hope class Misk Endeavor, that floating hospital capital ship, that will likely be what people will want to use for that kind of stuff. But, like a massive, big capital ship is a sitting duck. But that's for way down the line.
I won't go into too much detail on that. But that covers the detail that I've talked about here is what's coming in the first iteration of healing and the healing gameplay.
In just the T1 that comes in Alpha 315.
Correct.
So that confirmation there, that's a lot. Because before, Chris and Rich were talking about what they wanted for medical gameplay, that correct that we just heard from Rich means that we're getting these 4 drugs, we're getting the medical multi-tool, we're getting the medical healing gun, we're getting the downed but not out state, we're getting the medical scanner, we're going to be getting hospitals, we're going to be getting body dragging and body moving, we're going to be going to the hospital and dropping people off. Those are also, I think we're going to be getting, we're going to be expecting for 315 all these things. And now it's down to the roadmap roundup and stuff and biting your nails and stuff until 315 comes out to see what exactly makes it in. But everything he just said there, we can now expect, which is scary.
All right, so that's player healing. We've got other features that are under your gameplay pillar right now. We've got FPS radar, we've got hacking, we've got personal inventory. Where do we go next? What can you tell us?
Cool. So obviously, I think healing was a complex feature.
But so you see, now people are going, 315 is gonna be awesome. I mean, we've covered the roadmap roundup enough times to know not to know to be cautiously optimistic. But I can't help medical. CIG, please.
There was lots of things that are going on there. I know that the community is interested to hear where we're at with that, so I think it's good to get that out there so people can have the say. I think in terms of inventory, obviously we've talked about inventory already a lot.
There we go. Yeah, 316 is going to be awesome.
What we're trying to aim for to go alongside healing is that, you leave your stuff behind. Essentially, we won't be having this infinite bag of holding that you do right now with the PMA. We want to remove the PMA so that you're using the inner thought system that we're implementing that you've already probably seen using if you've used the Grinrock and going in and bringing up your interface. So essentially, the headline situation with healing is that we're going to local inventory. Mm-hmm. So you'll only have access to the things that you've put into the inventory at a landing zone. If you go into a ship, you'll only have access to the things that are inside that ship based off the inventory. It's still accessed by location, so you have to be in that location, then you can access that inventory. But the fundamental headline is if you're outside on a planet, you only have access to the things that you're carrying, that are things that are in your pockets, or that are things that are in your backpack, and that's it. So, and when you die or go to the new downed state, you will obviously leave your items there if you go and respawn back at a hospital. So that's really the crux of healing. Obviously, that people are already familiar with the system itself, and the biggest thing is obviously the removal of the PMA. You'll be able to move your items directly on to your character with the inner thought system, and also will be, as part of that release, will be coming with the asset manager. So you'll have a mobiGlas app that'll be able to show you all of where your stuff is. So you'll be like, okay, where did I leave the Gladius or my Gladius, or where was that armor or this gun? And you'll be able to go and find them and go, okay, that was on Area 18, okay, that's at Port Olisar or wherever. So that's kind of healing in a nutshell. We've talked a lot about the intricacies of healing before, but that.
So my head was kind of swimming thinking about 314 or whatever, or 315, but yeah, he's talked about basically, so the PMA is the mobiGlas app that you can basically go into and you can pull items out of or whatever and then put stuff on. He's saying that they're removing the PMA and using inner thought, you'll be able to drag items on you, which means that they're going to be using a similar system to how you can modify your guns currently. So that's kind of how you're going to be moving stuff onto your characters in the future going forwards once they get to this physicalized inventory system, which I believe is also for 315, but I'm not going to be medical gameplay sounds awesome and I'm looking forward to it, but I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of these things get pushed further, you know what I mean? But in my mind, all I can think of right now is how we can make medical gameplay into something else, like emerging gameplay wise. Like we've had fight clubs and stuff in the past, but now all I can think of is having two people fighting, but it's a team of 4. So you have 2 fighters and 2 doctors, and it's not a boxing match, it's a knife fight. And it's basically who can get the other person wrecked, anyway. I'll flesh it out. We'll have an event. We'll put it onto YouTube if we do it.
That kind of covers the small slice of it. The other 2, in terms of FPS radar and scanning and hacking. So I'll cover FPS radar and scanning first. So FPS radar and scanning, we are exactly the same as the ship scanning now, or the ship radar and scanning. So we worked with VTT and, myself and my team, we designed the radar and scanning system for both ships and for FPS. We wanted to make it sure that it was, it's using the same systems, it has the same promises and the same premise, so that if you have a really large signature, it's dampening all the other signatures. So I always give the example, which is like, I'm in the shower and my wife's shouting to me. I'm like, I can't hear you because all I can hear is the shower, but she can hear me. Right. She can clearly hear me responding back, and she's responding. I'm like, but I can't hear you. So that's what we've implemented as part of it. So that we have this gameplay where you can the cause and effect. So on the FPS side, you'll be able to go in and turn on a generator and maybe hide with that noise. Maybe you can't hear yourself, your emission is low, but maybe they can still find you or whatever. So there's definitely some signature gameplay that'll be introduced on the FPS. It's definitely not supposed to be intended to be bat vision. It's not, it's not like you just go in and turn it on or whatever, and then you have it on forever. When you do a ping, there will be consequences. People will be notified that they have been pinged, and you flare up all your signatures. So, when you do a ping, what you're actually saying is, I'm shouting into the dark, but I'm giving away my own location. So there's a bit of cat and mouse there, where it's like, okay, I'm here by myself. Do I want to give away my location? Or do I want to go, no, actually, I'm in a position here where I can flee. I'm going to see if there's anybody in there first.
So with the scanning stuff in 3.14, we're going to be getting it for ships, and they want to keep it systemic and then bring it down to the FPS level. But it does sound as if they're adding one extra emission to FPS scanning. Rich there is talking about, of course, sound being an emission that players can detect others by, which is interesting because it kind of brings me to another point that we had talked about on the stream, which was just like voice over IP and talking, and how that in and of itself is an entity. You can try this yourself. If you talk to somebody in Star Citizen and you're talking in voice over IP, and then you get into a lift and go somewhere, after a time, you'll hear what that person said again, but it's garbled, because when that person talks to you, it's not just like on Discord or whatever. The way Star Citizen does sound is it turns the sound into an entity, and then that sound entity then travels. So with the intensity of how you talk and how loud you do, and if you peak your microphone, then that sound actually travels as if you've shouted even more. So I would not be surprised if that's because when you do get this this new FPS scanning thing, if somebody talks, you'll be able to see it, like if you're playing a Tom Clancy Splinter Cell game, which is kind of neat to think about, but we'll have to see. But that's what I think we're getting.
And I'll ping out, there's 5 guys or whoever, I'm getting out of Dodge. Whereas sometimes you might do it and you're like, I haven't seen anybody because somebody's maybe hiding. Maybe they've turned off all of their, turned off a flashlight. They're not using their guns. Right. The one thing to note about the differences between FPS and ships, was a highlight, is that ships passively detect all signatures. So the EM, electromagnetic, IR, infrared, and CS, which is cross-section. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3 that it passively detects. Cross-section is like visual cross-section. On the FPS side of things, it only passively detects sound. So sound replaces cross-section. Okay. And then EMR is the same. And you can only ping for EMIR and DB. So your radar, when you're just passively walking around, only looks for sound. So if somebody, fired off, threw a grenade, used a weapon, is running, it might pick it up, and you'd be like, oh, there's somebody in that direction. But when you ping, you're looking for all of the signatures, and that's when you're giving yourself away and that side of things. And
so a test for us to do in that case would be to see how far away somebody needs to be to disappear as a pip on your FPS radar, then get them to shout and see if they pop onto the radar, because that would be sick.
And the scanning side of things is pretty much identical to the ship side of things. You bring up a scan mode, you can scan that person, find out all the different information about them, what they're carrying, what's their active status, what's their org, do they have a criminal record, because you can run their name and so on and forth. So we have that kind of gameplay alongside, so you can correctly ID someone if you're bounty hunting or so on and so forth. And then with hacking is almost a standalone encapsulated feature. So what we have is we'll be basically repurposing the hacking chips that we have right now.
Okay, thank you.
So the hacking chips will still be around. You'll have a hacking chip. You'll need to use that. And the way we're working with the environment team right now to go through all the locations is where you can hack something in, it's essentially you're going and using the maintenance access. So let's say you come to a PC or a ship or whatever, you're plugging into the maintenance access where somebody would come in and go, okay, I'm an IT administrator, I need to get into the system. Okay. So they have a skeleton key, should we say, AI, they're putting it in and they're helping fix the problems. You've obviously got an illegal skeleton key, essentially. You're then plugging it in, and then that brings the hacking mini game up on your visor, where you essentially have to manipulate the 3D board to avoid the AI and collect basically fragments of the passcode that you're trying to find.
So, if I'm not mistaken, hacking is Pac-Man.
And then when you find these passcodes, you can then put them in, and then that gives you access to whatever that is, whether that's opening a door, a terminal, terminal access, power access, elevators, whatever, the content guys decide they want to do. But essentially that's the premise behind it. And we have a scaling difficulty across hacking. So we have versions without AI,
3D
where it's just
Pac-Man.
simple and you can just do it yourself. Then we have versions that are time limited with multiple AI. The board's much more complex. And the premise is that a manufacturer in the world has created this 3D program to help people hack without actually having to script or program. So that's kind of where we're at with hacking. And that's obviously will slot into some of the FPS features to create some of the more interesting FPS
Hackman. Thank you, Whaleman.
Missions that the guys are working on in the background.
Okay.
Gotcha. So that's a lot of stuff coming from the gameplay pillar right now. And of course, I do want to reiterate that player healing and personal inventory are on their way for Alpha 3.15. We'll be covering those more in depth in ISC next quarter. Hacking we will also cover as it gets closer to its implementation. It could be 3.15, it could be whatever. It's when things are ready. And then FPS radar, the same boat. When it's ready, when all the resources are ticked and it's good to go, same deal there. Yep.
However, you see how Rich Tyrer is nodding for all this, but he was very specific about 3.15 having healing. Again, I believe it was Chris Roberts who said that the only reason why healing isn't coming in 3.14 is because they didn't have enough locations ready. So that's pretty much set in stone. But again, we're going to have to wait for the roadmap roundup to be certain about these things.
It definitely sounds like a lot of what you said today. It sounds like it's dangerous to go along, or it's dangerous to go alone. Bring friends.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, that is we're pushing the game towards what Chris has always had in his head. That vision of that game. Anything that we add is in line with what Chris wants to add to the game. I mean, all of these features have been prioritized by Chris to add to the game. And space is scary. It's dangerous. You're exploring these unknown planets or known planets, but if you just went to Africa, or you went to a North Arctic expedition, or you were going to go on the Amazon, or anywhere that is not just your familiar surroundings, you're going to have to prepare for those environments. So is it going to be hot? Is it going to be arid? Is there going to be bugs? Am I going to have to take tablets? So, do I need certain clothing to help me? And just as you're going on an expedition on just Earth, we're talking about going to all these different planets, these different moons, and all these different cave expeditions. And you need to as part of that gameplay loop, you need to understand you're only going to have the things that you take with you.
An example of this, actually, they released the new Galactopedia entries yesterday, I believe, and with that they talked about some of the planets in the Nix system, where Delamar and Levski are now, and one of those is actually a toxic planet with radiation and all that stuff. So maybe perhaps it means that with this whole medical system, you might need to take your shots or whatever before you go there, so you're going to be more immune to the toxicity of the location. Because basically what he's saying here is that this medical system will allow you to basically think ahead about where you're going to be going, and the same way that if I'm going to be doing a mission to board an 890 jump, I might want a sniper rifle to take people out from the hangars first. It's like that, but it's thinking about what I will need for the mission at hand. And it's not just about weapons, it's not just about what I mean to hack, but it's also about what kind of stuff would I need medically as well to keep my player as comfortable and as effective as possible, which is cool.
So it's up to you. And also, when you store stuff in your ship, if your ship blows up, those are the things that you're going to potentially lose on that ship. So you're going to have meaningful decisions, and then those decisions will have consequences.
So he's basically now saying that until they get something like contents insurance for your ship, having all your items aboard your carrack may not be the best idea. Having a base of operations in a station or like a planet or something like that would be probably for the best, which hopefully will tie into money sinks and stuff like that, so you have uses for Alpha UEC if you're paying storage and that kind of stuff.
And that will create a feeling that you are, more immersive exploring this universe. Rather than just like, oh, I'm in the bottom of a cave, I'll just bring up my PMA and I have access to whatever I bought, thousands of it. Which is not
true. Very true.
Like playing a game with cheats on, it diminishes what you're trying to achieve and the fun that you're trying to have, because the challenge is there for you to overcome.
Right.
So yeah, it's good to start getting some of those gameplay loops in there.
All right, so that's a lot of things to look forward to. We, of course, are still pushing hard on Alpha 3.14.
So I'm just thinking really quickly here. So the whole idea that like storage is going to be something that you have to think ahead about. You can't just put everything into your carrack and then go and do a mission. Well, you can, but it's risky, right? It will make things in the future, like let's say a Banu merchantman or something, actually useful, because those kinds of people will likely have items like that. And if they know that somebody is out there in the verse doing something and may not necessarily have exactly what they have, who is going to sell it to them? In Pyro, there's only one station, and like it's 4 times as big as Stanton. The player. It's something to think about, I guess.
Keep your eyes and ears open to the robertsspaceindustries.com website while ISC is on hiatus for updates about that. Rich, thank you for taking the time to be here on the show.
No worries.
We'll see you. We'll see you next quarter for the ISC segments on all of these. So take care, man.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
All right. Wow. So again, there's a lot to take away here. It might actually warrant a whole other video of me just going over some of the other things. But yeah. So essentially, as far as I'm concerned, everything that we've heard about medical gameplay from Rich Tyrer, and everything up until, of course, player death and DNA degradation and the cloning part, is going to be in at some level of iteration with 3.15. That's pretty cool. It's going to add a lot of really cool things to just gameplay in general when it comes to what you want to do in the verse. I'm getting stuck here in my head. I got like a word roadblock in my head, but essentially, if medical gameplay doesn't mean much to you, I don't feel like it's going to really affect your gameplay, is what I'm getting at. Like, if all you do in Star Citizen is sit in a Gladius doing bounty hunting missions, I don't necessarily think that that's going to affect you. But if that's all you're doing in Star Citizen, then you're not really playing it for all that it has to offer, right? Like, if you're not doing, on-foot missions, if you're not, like, I guess, diversifying how you play the game, then it's whatever. But if you are out there like to see what's new, to go exploring and all that stuff, and the items on your person and stuff are important to you, then I do feel like this is going to be really, really cool. What I'm getting at is I don't think that it's necessarily going to be too much of a hindrance to people who don't necessarily care too much about this part of the gameplay. I am looking forward to 3D Hackman, though. That's going to be interesting. Some really super exciting things to look forward to in the future, that's for sure. It's never a dull one when Rich Tyrer is talking, for sure. But I guess that's also because, he's the core gameplay lead or whatever. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're live on Twitch TV, we're going to be here for a little bit longer. But if you've been watching on YouTube, well, thank you so much for sticking with us this far. Lots of interesting things, as always. But yeah, feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one. Leave a comment below. What do you think that this medical gameplay means for the future of Star Citizen? Are you looking forward to this hacking thing? He talked about levels of hacking and how hacking might have different difficulties and that kind of thing. Do you think that you're going to specialize in hacking, like LFG, need one more hacker, that kind of thing? I really do hope that things like that have that same level of difficulty and expertise and experience as things like mining kind of does as well, because it will lead to a much richer universe. Imagine if we have like medical gameplay being as detailed as mining gameplay, being as detailed as hacking, or as even like power management on a capital ship, or shield management on a capital ship. You know, like, it does seem like they're going down that route, and if they do, at some point this is going to be a very interesting game. It already is, but you know, I can't wait for these features. This is the part of the game that really excites me, or at least these are the features in the game that excite me for sure. Anyway, that's a lot of talking for now, so thank you for watching. Again, you know, like, subscribe, there's a bell somewhere, and I'll see you in the next one. As always though, guys, be good.